Wave washing is an extraordinary hunting technique recorded in the pack ice of the Antarctic, says Bob Pittman. Orcas swim together to create waves that knock seals off small ice floes and into the water, where predators can kill and eat them. The waves can also be strong enough to break larger floes, dropping their residents into the sea. So, let's begin today's video. Whale. The killer whale, also known as the orca or blackfish, is the most deadly animal to roam the open oceans. It can weigh up to 11 tons, reach top speeds of 30 miles per hour, and has a mouthful of 3-inch-long interlocking teeth. In addition to these more noticeable physical adaptations, the orca's huge brain, which is also the second largest among ocean mammals, endows it with an intelligence that surpasses other animals. Scientists use a metric known as the encephalization quotient, or EQ, to estimate animal intelligence. EQ is the ratio of an animal's actual brain size compared to the expected brain size for an animal of its mass. Like other members of Delphinidae, the dolphin branch of the cetacean family tree, orcas rank high in EQ. They score about 2.5, which is much lower than humans. Furthermore, like other whales, orcas have a highly convoluted or folded brain and thick myelinated neurons, both of which are associated with processing power. So, this hunting strategy is not surprising given that they are highly social animals that hunt in coordinated packs. Some of the world's smartest creatures, including chimps, elephants, dogs, and humans, are also very social. Because of their intellect and sociability, killer whale pods have evolved innovative hunting methods that are passed down through generations. The strategies vary across regions based on available food items, but they all demonstrate the killer whale's keen predatory intelligence and creativity. What is wave washing? Seals are a favorite food source for orcas living near the Antarctic ice shelf. Seals avoid detection by perching above ice floes. However, killer whales have evolved a smart method for dumping the seals into the water. They charge the ice floe in tight formation, creating a huge wave front. They dive underwater just before reaching the ice, using their tails to give the wave a last-second push. The resultant wall of water crashes over the ice floe, removing the seal. Yes, orcas mostly hunt Weddell seals, and while they have been seen wave-washing penguins, they are not common prey. This could be because they are rather little and not worth the effort. Yes, each wave wash requires a coordinated charge from up to 50 meters away. We have even seen young orcas wave wash penguins off a floe only to swim away and leave the birds behind. They could have been practicing or just playing. A science team monitored killer whales hunting in ice floes off the western Antarctic peninsula during January 2009, finding they snubbed the more abundant craybeater seals in favor of the Weddells. These killer whales would identify and then attack Weddell seals almost exclusively, even though they made up only about 15% of the available seal population, said study researcher Robert Pittman from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Southwest Fisheries Science Center in La Jolla, California. How do they do it? The orcas, having identified their target, form a battle line and start charging toward the floe. Just before reaching it, they rotate to their sides in a single, coordinated action and dive underwater. The momentum generates a tremendous wave that floods the ice sheet, shattering its surface and whipping the flailing seal around. They slowly and deliberately repeat the charge. The ice fractures more. And finally, the wave launches the seal into the water. The whales, sometimes as many as 7 at a time, would assault the ice floe, causing a wave that either swept the seal off the ice or split it into smaller pieces, making it more vulnerable to further attack. After the seal was washed off the ice, the killer whales worked together to keep it from hauling itself onto another ice floe for safety. The whales appeared to try to confuse the seal by producing turbulence in the water with their tails and blowing bubbles into the water from their blowholes, according to the researchers. Away from the ice, the whales attempted to tire and eventually drown the animal by pulling it underwater by its hind flippers. The seal would eventually succumb to tiredness, and the killer whale pod would divide their catch underwater. In most cases, little of the seal's remains float to the surface, but in some cases, the dead seals have risen to the surface, and appeared to have been methodically skinned and dismembered before being eaten. Seal remains that we examined from one of the kills provided evidence of meticulous post-mortem prey, processing perhaps best termed butchering. Pittman and NOAA colleague John Durbin wrote online on March 1st in the journal Marine Mammal Science. In total, the crew saw 14 Weddell seal assaults, with 12 of those involving cooperative wave-washing activity to take down the target. The whales produced 4 killer waves for each successful attack, which lasted approximately 30 minutes. Killer whales making waves to wash seals off ice floes in Antarctica have only been witnessed a few times before. A previous study involving the current researchers concluded that this extremely unique killer whale population, known as pack ice killer whales, is a separate species. Finally, wildlife videographer Bertie Gregory, who has spent a decade watching the orcas, known as B1, a population of pack ice killer whales, describes it as totally evil to see. The amount of intellect that goes into creating each wave is staggering, he says. They solve problems through complicated collaboration. They are using water as a tool. Even, a seal may be flung into the sea after only one wave, which can take up to 5 minutes. But as Antarctica warms and sea ice melts, Weddell seals are increasingly living on land, out of orcas' reach. To track how the B1 orcas cope with a warming habitat, scientists have identified all 100 or so individuals. They discovered that B1s are losing approximately 5% of their population each year. Gregory is unsure whether this subgroup will become extinct or simply adapt their behavior. However, with fewer opportunities for orcas to wave, we're seeing an extinction of a culture.